In the heart of the neutral zone, floating among the stars, like a jewel set in the infinite void, was Galactic University, a sprawling institution that connected the brightest minds across the universe. This was no ordinary school. It was a crucible where species of every shape, size, and temperament came together to exchange knowledge, push boundaries, and solve the galaxy's greatest mysteries. The campus stretched across multiple levels, with towering spires that rose above the clouds, each one a hub of learning and discovery. Transparent walls allowed students to gaze out at the breathtaking cosmos beyond, a constant reminder that they were at the frontier of knowledge. Inside, vast lecture halls were equipped with holographic displays, alien artifacts, and research labs, where scientists and philosophers of different races collaborated on breakthroughs that could shape the future. Species from the farthest reaches of space walked these halls, their unique technologies and philosophies blending in a delicate dance of collaboration. The university was not just a place for education, it was a beacon of unity in a galaxy often torn by conflict. Here, minds met to unlock the very secrets of the universe, understanding it, mastering it, and sometimes wielding its power. But not all was as peaceful as it seemed. Beneath the surface of intellectual pursuits, tensions ran deep. Power struggles, both seen and unseen, played out in the shadows of academia, and in this nexus of knowledge, every discovery came with its own risks. Professor Zilvor stood at the front of the lecture hall, his translucent skin shimmering with an ethereal glow. His towering presence was imposing yet strangely calming, like a being who had seen centuries pass in a blink of an eye. His long, sharp features and piercing eyes gave him an air of wisdom beyond measure, though there was an intensity to his gaze that suggested far more than the surface showed. The students listened raptly as he lectured on the delicate balance of galactic ecosystems. His voice, though soft, carried an authority that demanded attention. He spoke of the fragile nature of life in the galaxy and the importance of understanding how different species thrived or failed in their environments. But even as he lectured on the beauty of cosmic harmony, there was an underlying tone of caution in his words. The galaxy is full of beauty, he said, but beauty alone cannot sustain life. Forces far beyond our understanding shape the destiny of worlds, and not all forces are benign. A slight pause lingered in the air as his students absorbed his words. Silvor was not just teaching them about the ecosystems of the galaxy, he was warning them. Beneath the calm, there was an undercurrent of fear, a recognition that certain forces, even within the seemingly peaceful academic halls of the university, were better left undisturbed. Professor Zilvor's research into the Death World's planets so hostile that only the strongest could survive was far from ordinary academic interest. There was something more to his studies, something that could change the course of the galaxy forever. And unbeknownst to his students, Zilvor had a secret agenda, one that would push the limits of their understanding, their morality, and their very survival. Ryshak, the cautious reptilian from the low-gravity swamps, shifted uneasily in his seat. His skin, a dull green, was barely noticeable against the backdrop of his surroundings. His world was fragile, a place where every step could bring destruction. His people had learned to tread lightly, to think before acting, because one wrong move could mean extinction. As he glanced at his fellow students, his thoughts were consumed by the grim assignment. Death World's planets where life struggled to survive. He couldn't shake the thought that some places, like Earth, should remain undiscovered. Some dangers, he believed, were better left untouched. Jaltar, the towering avian from a peaceful utopia, sat with a self-assured grin, his wings stretched slightly behind him, brushing the back of his seat with a quiet rustle. His homeworld had achieved a perfect balance of technology and harmony, a place where conflict was a foreign concept. To him, the notion of a death world was absurd. But with enough intelligence, everything can be controlled, he often said. He didn't understand why some species saw chaos as a threat. If the galaxy was full of challenges, surely technology could overcome them. But as his eyes met Zilvor's, doubt flickered. Was he wrong? Corina, the The timid amphibian from a tranquil oceanic planet was smaller and more delicate than the others. To her large round eyes, the color of the deepest ocean, were wide with both curiosity and fear. Her species thrived in peaceful, harmonious environments, untouched by the violence of the galaxy. The thought of visiting a death world made her insides twist. She wanted to learn, to understand, but the thought of danger frightened her. Yet, there was something in her that refused to shy away. She had always been quiet, but this assignment, this challenge, stirred something deep within her. It was time to step out of the safety of her world and face the darkness, no matter how terrifying. The assignment was clear. Research and present on death worlds, Professor Zilvor had commanded, his voice steady and unwavering. These were not worlds where civilization thrived, but places of chaos, where life fought against every possible threat, be it savage predators, deadly climates, or a hostile ecosystem designed to crush anything that dared to survive. The three students, each from vastly different worlds, found themselves thrust into the heart of a grim subject. Ryshak, with his cautious nature, was already hesitant. He had seen his species' homeworld almost destroyed by the simple instability of its environment. To him, these worlds represented nothing but tragedy. Jaltar, ever the optimist, saw the challenge differently. If there were creatures strong enough to survive on a death world, surely the technology to overcome it was possible. He scoffed at the idea that these worlds were beyond saving. And Corina, though terrified, knew that the key to understanding the universe was to face the darkness. Even if it meant looking into the abyss, she was ready to find out what lay in those dangerous corners of space. The trio's research began, and as they delved deeper into the mysterious worlds, the more they uncovered. With each discovery came a new realization. There were beings out there who not only survived but thrived on these deadly planets. The galaxy had far more to teach them than they had ever imagined. The revelation hit like a thunderclap. Earth, a place once considered an afterthought by most of the galaxy, was ranked as a Category 5 Apex Death World. The students sat in stunned silence as Professor Zilvor explained. Earth's environment is unlike anything you have ever known, he said, his voice growing dark. A planet where life teeters on the edge of extinction every day. From its volatile weather patterns to the creatures that roam its surface, it is a place where survival is not a guarantee, but a fight. Ryshak could hardly breathe, his heart pounding in his chest. How could such a planet even exist? He muttered. Jaltar was shaken, his usual confidence faltering for the first time. But how can anything survive there? How have they tamed such chaos? Corina, though frightened, felt a shiver of awe. Earth was both terrifying and fascinating, an enigma wrapped in the harshest reality imaginable. Zilvor's eyes glinted. That, my students, is the mystery. Earth is not a place to be conquered, but understood, and it holds secrets, secrets that could change everything we know about the galaxy and our place in it. The truth was clear now. Earth wasn't just a dangerous planet, it was a symbol of humanity's ability to survive against all odds. It was a world on the brink of destruction, and yet, it had lived. The galaxy would have to reckon with it. The students sat in stunned silence, the news still echoing in their minds. Earth, the planet they had only heard of in passing, a small speck in the galaxy, was classified as a Category 5 Apex Death World. Impossible, unbelievable. Ryshak shifted uneasily in his seat, the cool air of the Galactic University's lecture hall doing little to calm his nerves. A world so dangerous that survival is nearly impossible, he muttered, his voice low, more to himself than anyone else. It's absurd. Jaltar, ever the skeptic, clicked his beak dismissively, his feathers puffing in indignation. A Category 5. Preposterous. Earth is just another primitive world, one that hasn't figured out how to evolve past its savage instincts. It can't possibly be as dangerous as Zilvor claims. Corina, sitting quietly between the two, gave a tentative glance towards the other students, her large eyes wide with uncertainty. But what if it's true? What if Earth really is that dangerous? Zhao Ta's laugh rang out, sharp and confident. There's no way a world that primitive can be more lethal than any of the high-tech utopias we've encountered. This must be some sort of exaggeration. Raishak remained silent, eyes darting nervously. His mind wandered to the swampy, low-gravity world he called home. He could hardly imagine surviving in a place where the environment itself would actively fight against you. The debate raged on, each student contributing their skepticism, but deep down, a seed of doubt began to form in their minds. Professor Zilvor's voice cut through the rising murmur of skepticism, his tone calm but carrying an unmistakable weight of authority. He tapped a few controls on the holographic panel in front of him, and the screen shimmered to life, showing images of Earth's violent past, burning skies, crashing waves, and vast deserts where only the hardiest of life forms could survive. The professor's words grew more somber with each passing moment. Earth's history is not one of peace. It is a record of violent storms, mass extinctions, and ruthless survival. This is a planet that has experienced catastrophe after catastrophe, and yet humanity thrives. The students were silent now, their attention fully on the presentation. The holographic images shifted to show entire cities reduced to rubble by seismic activity. The remnants of ancient human wars, nuclear scars upon the planet's surface, remained as stark reminders of Earth's unrelenting cruelty. The human species, Zilvor continued, has faced extinction time and time again. Yet, they have not only survived, they have adapted, evolved. Humanity is a force to be reckoned with, capable of ingenuity and tenacity beyond anything we have encountered in our travels. The death worlds they inhabit are not the result of random chaos, but are the products of fierce creative survival. As the presentation ended, the students were left speechless. The once laughable notion of Earth as a Category 5 apex death world now felt more like a chilling reality. Zhao Ta's feathers ruffled with indignation as the screen flickered off, his arrogance still burning bright. Primitive, that's all Earth is, he said with a scoff. Its species are locked in constant battle with nature, fighting against a world that hasn't been properly tamed. How could anyone consider that a true challenge? Raishak, who had been quietly absorbing the data, spoke up, his voice shaky. But how do we know they aren't capable of something more? They've survived against all odds. Isn't that worth considering? Zhao Ta dismissed Raishak with a flick of his hand, his voice dripping with contempt. Survival doesn't equal sophistication, my friend. Just because a species clings to life doesn't mean it's worth studying. Technology, peace, these are the true marks of advancement. Earth is an anomaly, nothing more. Corina, her voice quiet but firm, added, survival is an art in itself. Isn't it worth exploring how they do it? Zhao Ta glared at her but said nothing, his belief in the superiority of his own species' peaceful existence unshaken. He was too proud to see the value in Earth's brutal reality. The murmur of disbelief and fear spread quickly through the class as Professor Zilvor made his final announcement. Since many of you remain unconvinced, I've arranged for a field trip. You will experience Earth's conditions firsthand. I've already made arrangements with Captain Elias Ward, a seasoned human guide, who will be accompanying us. A shockwave of unease passed through the room. Earth, a place of legend and myth, was no longer an abstract concept. It was real, and the students were about to step into it. Are we truly ready for this? Raishak muttered under his breath, his scales shifting nervously. Zhao Ta, though still skeptical, stood taller, his feathers bristling with pride. This will be nothing more than a study in primitive survival. We'll prove how much more advanced we are. But even he couldn't hide the flicker of doubt in his eyes. Professor Zilvor's gaze swept over the class, his expression unreadable. The journey will test your assumptions, and perhaps in the process you will learn something about yourselves and about humanity that you never expected. The students exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of the expedition settling on their shoulders. They were about to enter a world unlike any they had ever known, where survival wasn't a matter of technology, but of raw willpower. The door to the lecture hall swung open with a sharp creak, and a figure stepped inside. He was grizzled, weathered, and looked as though he had spent more time in the wilderness than in any classroom. Captain Elias Ward stood tall, his eyes hard and knowing. "Welcome to Earth," he said,
his voice gravelly and calm. Forget everything you've been taught. Out there, knowledge won't save you. Only survival matters. His presence immediately altered the room's atmosphere, and the students felt the weight of his words settle heavily upon them. They had read about Earth's history, seen its dangers through the professor's data, but now, standing in the presence of someone who had lived through it, the reality of what lay ahead struck them like a bolt of lightning. I hope you're all prepared, Captain Ward continued, a hint of a smirk tugging at his lips. You may think you know what danger is, but Earth will teach you otherwise. With that, the class was no longer a group of students. They were explorers ready to face the ultimate test. Their journey to Earth had only just begun, and the challenges ahead would change them forever.
The transport ship shudders as it lands in the dense Amazon jungle, the humid air rushing in to greet them. The landscape is a tangle of green, the thick foliage stretching endlessly, oppressive and overwhelming. Captain Elias Ward, standing tall in his weathered survival gear, casts a glance over the group of alien students. "This is Earth," he says, his voice gruff but steady, "where everything is trying to kill you." The students step off the ship, the heat slapping them like a wall. Sweat pours down their faces, and the air is thick with humidity, smothering every breath they take. Ryshak, with his scales glistening under the sun, takes a cautious step forward. His eyes flicker as he adjusts to the oppressive heat. Jaltar, sleek and confident, moves forward with arrogance, brushing away a few loose strands of feathers. He looks at the dense jungle with amusement. "Hardly a paradise, is it?" Jaltar sneers. "I can't imagine why anyone would choose to live here." Churiana, with her soft, pale skin, seems to shrink away from the dense foliage. Her breath comes in shallow gasps as she stares at the overwhelming expanse of the jungle. The once untouchable notion of danger now seems real, too real. This is wrong," she murmurs, more to herself than anyone else. The group, used to temperate, controlled environments, begins to feel the weight of Earth's wild energy pressing in on them. The jungle seems alive, a living, breathing entity, full of hidden dangers, and every step taken feels like a step into the unknown. Ward eyes them all coldly, clearly amused by their discomfort. "Keep your eyes open. This jungle doesn't care who you are." The first lesson in Earth's brutal ecosystem comes quickly. Ryshak, distracted by his thoughts, nearly steps on a small brightly colored frog, a flash of red and green on the ground, almost too beautiful to be real. It's not, though, the dart frog. It's venom, lethal. Ryshak's breath catches in his throat as he freezes just inches away. He pulls his foot back with a quick jerk, his heart pounding. A low chuckle escapes Ward. "Close," Ward says, pointing at the frog. "One step closer, and you'd be dead." The tension is still thick in the air, but it's quickly shattered when Jaltar, boasting about his physical superiority, steps too confidently into the underbrush. Within moments, the swarm arrives, a tidal wave of fire ants, stinging and biting with a vengeance. Jaltar screeches, his feathers flaring in panic. The alien is writhing on the ground, his skin reddening rapidly. His body, so accustomed to strength, now falters against the tiny creatures. "Help me," Jaltar screams, his calm demeanor shattered. The others rush to help, but it's clear time is running out. His breath comes in rapid bursts as his face contorts in pain. Ward steps forward, a calm hand on his shoulder. "You're not invincible here. Earth doesn't care about your arrogance." And then, as if summoned by the chaos, a jaguar silently emerges from the dense underbrush, its golden eyes fixed on the group. A low growl rumbles in its throat. Churiana, still shaken from the earlier shock, barely notices it at first. Only when the group starts whispering urgently does she look up. The jaguar's eyes glint with hunger. Ward growls under his breath, "Keep moving." Now, the predator melts back into the shadows, a chilling reminder of the jungle's merciless nature. Later that evening, Ward leads them to a riverbank, where the students watch in awe as a massive crocodile lunges from the water, snapping its jaws around an unsuspecting deer. The speed and precision are horrifying, but they can't look away. This is how Earth works, Ward explains, watching them with piercing eyes. It's not about what's strongest, but what can outwit and outlast. The students, stunned into silence, watch as the crocodile drags its prey beneath the water with terrifying efficiency. No one speaks for a long moment. Humans, Ward continues, we had to become the predators here. Once we were prey to creatures like these, but we adapted, always adapting. The scene is a brutal education for the students. The jungle is not just about survival, it's a war, and Earth is a battleground where only the most cunning survive. By the time the sun begins to set, the alien students are visibly shaken. The Rishak, normally composed, stares into the jungle, his sharp eyes now wary. His earlier bravado is gone, replaced by a deep, unsettling realization. This is not a world to be conquered, he admits softly, his voice low and strained. Jaltar, who had mocked Earth's primitive nature just hours ago, now stands with his feathers slicked back, his arrogance crumbled. I did not expect this, he confesses, though pride still stings his voice. Earth, it's far more dangerous than we were led to believe. Churiana, who had been quiet throughout, steps forward. It's not just the creatures, she murmurs, it's the environment itself. It's hostile, relentless. The harsh truth of Earth's wildness sinks in. The jungle is alive, and it's not on their side. They had thought themselves the apex predators, but here, they're nothing more than prey. Ward surveys them, his face unreadable. You've seen only the beginning. That night, as the group huddles around a fire, Elias Ward tells them stories of humanity's rise from the brink of extinction. How humans, through ingenuity, adapted to Earth's many challenges. We were pushed to the edge, Ward says, his voice low and rough. As we learned to use tools, to make fire, to build. As we fought and survived, not because we were the strongest, but because we kept adapting. We found a way to survive, no matter what. Rishak, who had once dismissed humanity as primitive, now listens intently. Jaltar, who had seen humanity as weak, now watches Ward with something akin to respect. Even Churiana, who had struggled with the heat and pressure of the jungle, begins to understand. You don't just fight here, Ward says, you survive with your mind, your will. That's what makes humanity the apex predator, not brute strength, but the unyielding will to live. The students, once so sure of their superiority, now feel the weight of what Earth represents. The planet's strength isn't just in its creatures or its environment, it's in the humans who fought tooth and nail to survive, adapting to every challenge. They begin to see Earth not as a primitive world, but as a proving ground, and they're just beginning their test. The Amazon jungle, lush, dense and suffocating, had already proven itself to be a living, breathing force of nature. That nothing prepared the group for what came next. Dark clouds rolled in quickly, blotting out the sun. The air grew thick with anticipation as the temperature dropped suddenly, sending a shiver down their spines. The alien students, their bodies not accustomed to such extremes, froze in disbelief. It was as though the jungle itself had sensed their presence and decided to test them, to remind them that Earth's raw power was not to be underestimated. And then, the storm hit. The skies tore open, unleashing a torrential downpour. Rain hammered down in sheets, drenching them instantly. The wind howled, tugging at their clothes and pushing them backward with its force. The jungle, once a sprawling labyrinth of life, now seemed to be at war with itself. Trees bent under the pressure, their branches snapping like brittle bones. The insects, previously a nuisance, were now drowned out by the roaring tempest. Elias Ward, ever the seasoned leader, remained calm amidst the chaos. Find shelter now, he commanded, his voice cutting through the storm like a blade. The alien students,
visibly shaken, fumbled to follow his instructions. Their movements were slow, deliberate, as if they couldn't quite comprehend the intensity of the situation. To them, this was madness, but for Elias, it was nothing more than another challenge to overcome. As the students scrambled, struggling against the violent storm, Elias's voice echoed in the whirlwind. "This is Earth. You cannot control it. Only adapt." The storm raged on, showing no mercy. The group was now faced with their first real test of survival: shelter. It was the only thing standing between them and the jungle's wrath. The alien student struggled. Ryshak, agile and resourceful, scurried around, gathering materials with an efficiency that surprised even Elias. He was quick to adapt, but even he felt the frustration of the task. The rain made every movement more cumbersome, each branch slipping from his grasp as though the jungle itself was determined to make his efforts futile. Jaltar, on the other hand, stood still, arms crossed in defiance. "This is beneath us," he said, his voice laced with arrogance. "We are scholars, not laborers." His words hung in the air like a challenge, daring anyone to oppose him. Elias didn't flinch. He merely nodded toward the rain-soaked trees and the flooding ground beneath their feet. "Sometimes," Elias said, his voice low but steady, "you have to get your hands dirty to survive." The tension between them crackled, but Elias kept his focus. He moved from one alien to the next, guiding them through the process, showing them how to lash branches together, how to weave leaves to form a rudimentary roof. The storm showed no mercy, but neither did they. The group, despite their differences, was learning. They were adapting, whether they liked it or not. With the rain pouring down relentlessly, Elias pushed the group harder. He knew that if they were going to survive, they needed to think beyond the storm. They needed to focus on the solution, not the problem. "Listen to me," Elias shouted over the howling wind. "Humanity didn't survive Earth's dangers by running away from them. We faced them head-on. We adapted. We learned." He was relentless. As the alien students struggled to piece together the shelter, Elias worked beside them, showing them how to use their limited resources in innovative ways. When one idea failed, they moved to the next. When the branches broke, they found more. And when the rain threatened to wash everything away, they fought to keep it standing. "We've never had it easy," Elias continued, his voice calm despite the chaos. "But we've survived, and now you will too. Failure isn't the end, it's a lesson." Each failure was met with a new strategy, a new approach. With every misstep, the group became stronger, more resilient. The shelter slowly began to take shape, though its foundation was shaky, but it was theirs, built with determination, ingenuity, and human willpower.
Amid the chaos, there was a surprising turn. Kirina, who had been quiet and hesitant from the beginning, was the first to truly adapt. She had watched as the others struggled, her heart pounding in her chest, unsure of herself, but something inside her clicked. She moved toward the materials, her fingers trembling at first, then with growing confidence. She worked carefully, methodically, using the resources at hand in ways others hadn't considered. Her eyes, once filled with doubt, now burned with determination. With a few simple movements, Kirina pieced together a shelter that was sturdier than anything they had tried before. Her creation wasn't perfect, but it was functional, and in that moment, she understood. She looked up at the others, her chest heaving from the effort. "It's not about strength," she said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. "It's about thinking." The group stood in silence, awestruck by her breakthrough. Her fear had transformed into strength, and as they gathered together beneath the shelter she'd created, the lesson was clear. Adaptability, resourcefulness, and the willingness to learn were qualities that anyone, no matter their size or strength, could develop. As the storm subsided, the group stood before their shelter, a testament to their survival. It was crude, far from perfect, but it stood tall in the face of the chaos that had nearly consumed them. The rain had stopped, but the air was thick with the weight of what they had just experienced. Elias surveyed the group, his voice steady but filled with pride. "Look at what you've done. This shelter, this survival, it didn't come from brute force. It came from ingenuity, from willpower." The alien students exchanged glances, their eyes wide with realization. Earth's environment, once perceived as a threat, an insurmountable obstacle, was the very thing that had forged humanity into what they were. Raishak, the first to break the silence, spoke with a newfound respect. You are survivors, all of you." Jaltar, who had once scoffed at the notion of manual labor, nodded. "We were wrong. This place, it's not just dangerous, it's the proving ground for everything." Elias's smile was small, but it was enough. Humans thrive because of Earth's dangers, not in spite of them. We've learned to survive here, and so will you. And as the group stood together, their shelter now a symbol of their growth, they realized the truth. Earth wasn't just a dangerous world, it was the birthplace of the ultimate survivors, and humanity's strength didn't lie in its power or its size, but in its unyielding will to adapt and overcome. The transport ship's engines hummed quietly as it docked at the sleek, metallic platform of Galactic University. The once imposing, pristine walls of the university now felt cold and distant, alien even. The polished floors and bright, sterile lights of the academic halls seemed out of place after their journey through Earth's chaotic wilderness. They had returned from a world that thrived on danger, where survival meant adapting or dying. Elias Ward glanced at his students, their faces now a mix of exhaustion, awe, and quiet contemplation. They had left the raw, unpredictable forces of nature behind, but something within them had shifted. They weren't the same students who had boarded the ship months ago. The realities of Earth had altered them, physically, emotionally, and intellectually. Now, they stood on the precipice of sharing their findings with an academic community that had little understanding of what it meant to fight against a world that wanted to kill you at every turn. The halls of Galactic University, with their towering glass structures and academic precision, seemed almost trivial now. Elias pushed through the door into the auditorium, where the students and professors awaited their presentation. Silence fell as they entered, the weight of their experience hanging in the air. The room was filled with alien species, all from worlds that had never known the brutal forces of Earth. The presentation began with a quiet hum from Elias, as the data scrolled across the screen, showing lush landscapes, but also monstrous storms, deadly predators, and ecosystems in constant flux. As the students began to speak, their voices steady, the crowd listened with growing disbelief. "We came to Earth expecting to study an easily conquerable world," one student began, "but what we found was a planet that fought back. Not only did we survive, but we thrived." The room was stunned into silence. The students described Earth's tumultuous weather patterns, its extreme temperatures, its beasts that could tear through metal with ease. They spoke of storms that tore down trees, and predators that could smell fear. But they also spoke of humanity, a species that had adapted, used ingenuity, and found a way to turn the tide of nature's wrath. "It wasn't just the environment we had to fear," Elias continued. "It was the creatures, it was the conditions, but most of all, it was humanity itself. Because we never gave up, the air was thick with awe and unease. The truth was undeniable. Earth wasn't a primitive world, it was a death world, where the only rule was to adapt or perish, and humanity had mastered that lesson." As the presentation concluded, the room was still, a strange mix of fear and admiration hanging in the air. Some alien species, whose planets were calm and predictable, could barely comprehend the idea of living in such conditions. Their societies had flourished in peaceful environments, where survival was a matter of intellect, not grit.
Others, more battle-hardened, nodded in approval, impressed by the sheer resilience of humanity. They had faced extinction on their own worlds, but Earth's danger was something else entirely. It was chaos, it was raw, and humanity had somehow thrived within it. The concept of Earth being a death world was no longer laughable. It was a fact, and the galaxy now saw humanity in a new light, no longer as the underdog, but as a species forged in the crucible of survival. Earth was not just a world to be studied, it was a planet that demanded respect. Jiao Ta had been certain from the start. Earth was primitive, a world ruled by brute force and basic survival instincts. But as the students spoke, as they recounted their harrowing experiences, his certainty began to crumble. He sat at the back of the room, his arms folded, a scowl forming on his face. How could a species survive such chaos? He muttered to himself, unable to reconcile the truth with his perception of Earth as a backward world. Then it hit him. The realization was sudden, overwhelming. He had underestimated Earth, underestimated humanity. These beings, these humans, had not just survived. They had conquered death itself, not through technology or sheer strength, but through something far more dangerous: creativity, adaptability, and willpower. Jiao Ta's arrogant facade shattered, replaced by a deep, humbling silence. He had been wrong. Humanity had faced insurmountable odds, and one, Kurina, stood at the front of the room, holding her notes, but her eyes were no longer cast downward. The timid student, who had once flinched at the thought of confrontation, was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone forged by the brutal lessons of Earth. "I was afraid," she said, her voice steady, "afraid that I wasn't strong enough to survive, that I wasn't capable of adapting." She paused, looking at the faces before her. But Earth doesn't care about strength. It cares about will. It cares about adaptability. Her transformation was clear to everyone in the room. The quiet girl who had feared failure now spoke with the confidence of someone who had faced death itself and overcome it. She wasn't just a survivor. She was a testament to what humanity could achieve when it refused to bow to the impossible. And in that moment, she knew her future had changed. She wasn't just a scholar, she was something more, an embodiment of humanity's greatest strength. Professor Zilvor stood before the shimmering holographic console, his three-fingered hands hovering over the interface. His violet eyes flicked over the newly updated data, an unspoken reverence in his gaze. The words on the screen were now undeniable. Earth had been reclassified, Category 5 Death World. It was a term that had been reserved for the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. Yet, Earth's classification felt different. With a quiet hum, Zilvor activated the final entry in the galactic database, documenting the full scope of Earth's ecosystem, its lethal storms, vicious predators, and brutal landscapes. But his voice held the weight of something far more significant. The true danger, he spoke, more to himself than to anyone in the room, is not the environment. It's the species that calls this world home. Humans. They do not just survive, they adapt, evolve, and conquer. His tone was calm, yet it carried the gravity of centuries of galactic understanding. He paused, his eyes drifting to the distant stars, as if considering how this new knowledge would ripple through the galaxy. Earth was no longer a footnote in the universe. It was a symbol of survival. Elias Ward, the human guide who had led the students through their dangerous exploration, stood in the corner of the room, arms folded. A smile, small but knowing, crept across his face as he observed the professor's solemn conclusion. Professor Zilvor's analysis, though insightful, was only the surface. Elias had known that all along. His gaze turned toward the professor as the hum of the database faded into the quiet tension of the room. "And you've only scratched the surface," Elias said with a smirk, his voice casual, almost playful. The room fell silent. The weight of his words lingered. There was something deeper, something more dangerous about humanity's story that had not yet been uncovered. Elias's statement was not an exaggeration, it was a promise. He had lived through Earth's trials. He knew the unspoken truth. Humanity's true nature was far more complex than even the galaxy's brightest minds could fathom. The professor met his eyes, the corners of his mouth tightening. The cryptic smile lingered, leaving the audience with a sense of mystery and awe. The galactic auditorium was eerily quiet after the presentation. The data was updated, the analysis complete. But as the students packed up their equipment, there was a palpable weight in the air, a heavy realization that Earth's journey had just begun, at least in the eyes of the universe. Elias stood at the back of the room, watching as the others gathered their thoughts, their minds still wrestling with what they had just learned. Earth, once considered a primitive and dangerous world, was now understood for what it truly was, a beacon of human resilience. It wasn't just a planet of chaos, it was a testament to human willpower. But as Elias walked toward the door, his voice broke the silence, his tone more reflective now. We've only just begun to show you what humanity is capable of. The galaxy has yet to see what we can do when we are pushed to the edge. His words hung in the air, unanswered. The lecture was over, but Earth's story, humanity's story, was far from complete. As the group left the room, the galaxy's understanding of Earth had shifted, but there were still vast, unexplored depths to uncover. Humanity had mastered survival, but the true test was yet to come.